Hey, what's up, everybody?
Welcome back to Mile Higher Podcast, episode 237. And today's episode is a little bonus Jonas for you guys. We are going to be doing some philosophy thought experiments. So again, this is outside of our regularly scheduled content. And we are really excited to do these thought experiments today.
Yeah, it's always fun to, kind of break up the normal content that we do and kind of do something that's a little bit outside of the box. Say, take your mind a mile higher. Today, you got to take your mind very high.
Yeah, somewhere for sure. These are really interesting. So basically, they are different scenarios that we are going to be thinking about and then saying our opinions on or what we would do in these situations.
Yeah, this is usually, thought experiments are usually a part of a lot of like philosophy classes, especially in college and things like that. But I never took philosophy in college, which I regret. I would have probably really enjoyed.
I loved my philosophy class.
Oh yeah, you did it, huh?
Yeah, just one class, just a brief, like 101, but I liked it.
Yeah, it looks really fun. So I'm excited to be a student today. I actually haven't even seen all of these. We wanted to kind of go in with a fresh, perspective, not have too long to think about these.
It's going to really give you an inside look at who we are.
Oh, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm excited.
And also just like how different your answers are from mine and Janelle and stuff. So this is going to be a really fun one. But this episode is brought to you by Daily Harvest, also milehighermerch.com. Go check it out. And Higher Love Wellness.
Yes.
We haven't talked about Higher Love Wellness. We actually are very, very close to releasing some new products, which I'm very excited about. And there will be more details coming out here probably in the next couple of weeks. We'll be making a big announcement over there. So that is higherlovewellness.com. Use code MileHigher for 10% off. So let's begin.
Me and my new curtain.
Yes. Check it out, people. If you're watching video somewhere,
Isn't she
finally
beautiful?
have a new backdrop.
So proud.
It's so good.
Took us a while. Well, every time,
That's what
every
we do
new year,
here.
we make little improvements.
That's what we do here.
That's
We're
right.
always trying to improve.
That's right. Always trying to take it up a notch.
I'm sure
folks.
some people are like, yeah, shut the, what are you guys talking about?
Hey, people enjoy little updates.
Yeah.
Okay. This one is a topic of self-driving cars, I guess you could kind of say. So here we go. Let me give you a little rundown. Imagine you are a programmer of self-driving cars. Naturally, you will program the car so that it avoids accidents. So when a truck carrying lumber is in front of the driver and one of the logs comes loose, threatening to impale the driver, the car moves to the left. Now imagine there is a car to the left. You would naturally program the car to move to the nearest open space, right or left. But now imagine there are two vehicles next to the self-driving car. If the car moves to the left, the driver in the car will die. If the car moves to the right, the driver in that car will die. If the self-driving car does not move, then the driver dies. What do you program the car to do? And now there's different levels here. So I'll kind of let you absorb that, and then we can go on to the next piece of information.
This is actually one of my most irrational fears in life. Ever since I saw Final Destination, the scene where the logs come off the car. Oh my God. The truck. Yeah. It scared the shit out of me. And now I will not drive behind anyone that has like a ladder or anything that looks loose on their car.
And hypothetically, this could be an actual real situation.
Yeah.
Right? Because obviously a lot of automakers are starting to introduce these autopilot features where, whether it's hands-free or there's not totally autonomous vehicles or a whole lot of them. There's a few out there, but I think in our lifetime, that's obviously going to be a feature that is just going to come with every vehicle that you purchase from, you can manually drive it if you want to, or you can have your car autonomously. So in a situation where you are autonomously allowing your vehicle to take you where you want to go, what do? Do you save yourself? Do you kill the person next to you?
Well, you're doing this for a random person who's driving.
Oh, that's right. You're the programmer in this situation. Yeah. So what do? Well, either way, somebody's going to die.
Yeah, I'm like, there's no good answer for this.
But you're the programmer of the vehicle. So ultimately, you want the driver to survive, right? Because you're the programmer of that vehicle.
Yeah. I guess from a legal perspective, the obvious answer would be to do what's best for the company that you work for.
But is it really better for the company if your vehicle then kills somebody else. Maybe
Yeah, I
the
guess
driver
that-
survives, but the person next to you dies.
But this is where it all comes into play. Let's say that you're at the dealership and they're trying to sell you this car and you're like, yeah, it's so great. They're telling you it's amazing. It's if there's a situation like this, of course, you want to be sold as like, this is the safest car for you and your family or whoever else is in the car with you. Not so much as like, yeah, well, depending on the scenario, it might actually decide to kill you and hurt you more. Like, are you really going to buy it? Usually humans have their self-interest in mind.
Yeah,
and
from a
wanna save
sales
themselves.
perspective, I guess programming it to protect the driver of the vehicle makes most sense.
Yep.
But let's take it a little step
But morally, is that the right answer?
There is no right answer morally.
No.
Okay, here we go. So, okay, there's the driver. You're in the car, same scenario, but on the left is a motorcyclist and the driver on the right is a car. Do you hit the car because they have a better chance of surviving? But would this be punishing the person for driving the car? Or do you hit the motorcyclist because it's less safe than the car?
Oh, damn. This just got even harder.
Or, again, kind of like same idea. What if there are cars on both sides, but the driver on the left of the car is not wearing a seatbelt? Do you hit the right because they have a better chance of survival? But then you're punishing the people who are just trying to be safe wearing the seatbelt. Or do you hit the non-seatbelt driver as a punishment for not wearing the
Non-seatbelt, for
seatbelt?
sure.
Okay, this is horrible. I don't know.
Teach them a lesson.
Okay,
Yeah.
are we giving our answers to the first one or all of these?
I mean, the idea of like the motorcycle versus the car versus the seatbelt is kind of similar in the sense of we know that motorcycles are less safe than cars.
Right.
And we know that wearing a seatbelt is more safe than not wearing a seatbelt. So
I think it would make more sense from, you got to remember what perspective you're looking at this from too. Is like, as the programmer, you'd go for the car over the motorcycle because obviously the motorcycle's likely going to have a lesser chance of surviving as opposed to, because what if you hit this other car that's also an autonomous car and then it's able to move to a different lane? You know what I mean? It senses it. A lot of cars are able to sense somebody coming over to their lane. So what if it's able to then move
quickly
out of that lane and therefore both of you are okay? But ultimately, if you just think from a safety perspective, hitting the motorcyclist is the worst case scenario because that person's likely going to die or sustain serious injury. So hitting another car, the chances of them surviving are far greater because of the safety features that a car affords you over a motorcycle. There's no airbags on a motorcycle versus car.
Right.
There's airbags.
So pretty much the right answer is to always go to the right.
well, I guess that's the whole idea of philosophy is like there is no right answer, really.
Well, yeah, because either way, there's
or is the right answer
destruction.
to program the car to kill you? Because really, like, so a pole's coming at my head. I got to swerve and either kill this person on the right or the left. Yeah, the programmer would probably try and save your life like we were talking about, but is the true right answer to kill yourself and save these innocent people who had nothing to do with this?
Well, you're still an innocent person if you're driving the car and the person ahead of you.
Sure.
So I feel like everyone's an innocent person.
But you just happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. So do you sacrifice your own life?
So do you gamble with fate? You just let fate take you out. You just let, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Or maybe, people believe everything happens for a reason. So the reason is, the way you leave this world is taking a big old log to the face. Then maybe that's how it's supposed to be. So why mess with that?
Well, as the programmer of the car, I think what I would do is have the vehicle always move to the right because that would prevent the driver from being killed. And ultimately, that's a selling point. So it's good for the company.
What if both the left and right cars are wearing seatbelts, but the driver of the self-driving car is not? Do you program the car to take the hit as a punishment for the driver?
Oh, damn.
Whoever this programmer is has a lot of philosophical questions to consider.
But as we get into self-driving cars, this actually becomes a real question because then you get in the whole idea of like, well, let's say there's, in this scenario, I'm in a Tesla. The person who's driving the car is in a Tesla. The person on the left of me is in a Tesla, but the person on the right of me is in some other electric vehicle, self-driving car.
Yeah.
So obviously Teslas are going to be in their best interest together. So do you program it to hit the Prius? Like when, because want to sell your product as a company, and now you have competition. They're all doing the same thing. So how do you know what the right answer is?
There is no right answer.
There's no right answer,
These are
but there
hard
is
for
a
me.
right answer, because ultimately, as the programmer, your loyalty lies to who you work for.
Mm-hmm.
So
And selling. So yeah, I think in that
it's a
sense,
better
again, I
headline.
would
It's
say
a better
always go to the right.
headline if man in Tesla survives and sadly man in Prius dies. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
for the brands, like for the company. But philosophically, obviously, there's major problems there. Like,
And there's more.
there's
room
no
for
right
legal
answer.
defense,
There's
too.
no right answer there.
Yeah, I would say if I was the programmer, I'd program it to go to the right, to hit the car,
Okay.
avoid the motorcycle. Seatbelt question, I would say seatbelts are kind of irrelevant. I would still program it to go to the right.
What if you
But then
were...
does that teach people that you can not wear a seatbelt and you'll be fine, because it's just gonna save you anyway, but it's gonna kill somebody else in the process. You know what I mean?
But it still doesn't.
I don't know. I think
Maybe in that specific situation.
I think
but,
if you don't wear a seatbelt, you deserve to just take the hit. Honestly, because that's just like
but is that
that's a
helping
no-brainer.
your company as the programmer?
Well, then
of
the
car?
company doesn't have liability at that point if you didn't wear a seatbelt.
Oh, that's a good.
You know what I
point.
mean? So if you take the hit and they're like, well, Josh died because he didn't have a seatbelt on. Had he had a seatbelt, he likely would have lived.
So they just all your safety features go out the window if you don't have your seatbelt clipped
Right.
in.
Like when you click your seatbelt in, it's
That's
engaging
honestly
the
a good way to
safety
get
system.
people to wear their seatbelts.
Exactly.
Like these features
Wear a
won't kick in unless
seatbelt
this
or
is
Disclaimer,
on.
it's not our problem if you're not going to take precaution.
Yeah, click it or die.
Click it or die.
Okay,
yeah.
how about this though? So imagine you're in a self-driving car driving down a single lane mountain road. You're on I-70, and all of a sudden you're approaching Eisenhower at a
Okay.
high speed.
Which is a tunnel, by the way.
Yeah,
for
sorry.
those that don't know.
Yeah,
It's a big
Eisenhower
tunnel.
big tunnel. Just before you enter Eisenhower Tunnel, a child tries to run across the road but trips and falls, blocking your entrance, and the car cannot brake in time. The car has two choices: hit the child, killing him, or swerve and hit the tunnel wall, killing you. What is the car supposed to do?
Oh, okay.
Probably hit the child.
Really?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I
because
kinda-
the car's job is to keep you safe ultimately, and it is to keep others safe. But in this scenario, it's gonna be.
Who is letting their child play outside the Eisenhower Tunnel? That's the real
Could you
question
imagine
here.
some shit like that? But you know,
But you could also like say an animal ran
sure.
out in front.
Well, I think you should always try to protect the youth who are defenseless.
Not when they're stupid
What
and
if
out
there's
in the
a
middle
kid?
of the road.
What if there's a youth inside your car?
Right.
Oh, that changes
Yeah.
things. Yeah,
What-
if your
what
family's
if
in
we
the
have
car,
our-
then you hit the kid.
Yeah. Ultimately, sucks for the kid, but
Yeah.
it's better that you and your family live, because you did not create the situation, right? You
Yeah.
didn't create this horrible, tragic situation that's about to unfold. But unfortunately,
Yeah, if my kid was in the car, it would hit the random kid.
right. It's just the way it has to be.
These are stressful.
Feel your stress levels rising?
Yeah, definitely.
So, okay, if self-driving cars are the future, who gets to make these decisions? Legislators, ethicists, car companies? Like, who's creating these laws of what cars can and cannot do?
I think ultimately it has to be a council get together. Like, there's got to be multiple people involved, because if you leave it up to the car companies are just going to do what's best for them.
Yeah,
Because
almost
as
like
we
they're-
know, it's profits over people. So
Yeah.
they're going to do what's going to protect the brand and protect their profits over the safety of the public. So obviously there's got to be oversight to that, whether it's the government or outside groups that are somehow involved. I think the same thing with, self-driving cars, there is AI within the vehicle, right? So there's got to be somebody looking over the AI and the decisions that this AI is making. So I think it's multiple. I think there's got to be like an ethics board that
Yeah.
oversees the overarching
Mm-hmm.
umbrella of this technology, right? And is making sure that the companies that are developing the technology and selling it to the public are complying with these sort of universal laws, I guess is the way I think of it, is like there's got to be universal laws to AI and to anything that is autonomous in our world.
Yeah.
And if there's not, then that's going to be a huge problem, because people are going to exploit that and take advantage of it. And
Yeah, there
it's
should be
going
like
to
a
end.
whole department to deal with this.
Well, there's going to have to be. And I think there are some organizations out there that are starting to kind of look at this issue, because this is going to be a huge issue in our future, of especially when people start owning humanoid robots and stuff.
Yeah, that day's coming.
How is that gonna work? Is the robot gonna save you, or is it gonna kill the other person? You know what I mean? Like, it's the same dilemma that's gonna unfold with the self-driving cars as it is with any other autonomous AI.
Damn, that's hard.
Robot.
There needs to be like a whole department or board, and I would not want to be part of that. That sounds like incredibly stressful.
What if you could make the decisions for the car, and like, or even, being able to buy an ethics pack, you could call it, configuration, so that you decide what the fate is.
Well, I think that is a good idea, although you have to be prepared to pay the consequences of your actions. I mean, it's the same thing as if you were buying a weapon, right? You go and buy a gun. It's the same dilemma. You can either you can use that gun for, within the bounds of the law, or you can use it to break the law with it. It's the same thing with like a vehicle, ultimately, and these types of decisions. So I'd say that could, maybe there's an ethics pack that helps you make those decisions, especially in a situation where you as the human aren't able to manually input your decision before something happens. But ultimately, if you were the one programming your own vehicle, if something bad were to happen, you are on the hook for that. And maybe that's how it has to be, is like a vehicle is a weapon.
Yeah.
You ask the police about that, and
so
people
true.
use their vehicles as weapons. So it's the same thing. It's like, it's no different to me than buying a gun, right? It's like, it's the same thing. You can use it for the right purposes or the wrong purposes, and you're on the hook either way.
Yeah.
So if something goes wrong, you're on the hook for what happened from that weapon. That's what I think. But I don't know. That's just one way to look at it, I guess.
But I think when it comes to programming vehicles, that is going to get very dicey and turn into a different situation, because that can be like prevented.
Right. Well, because there's going to be people out there. So like, say there was no limit on the speedometer, and we enter a world where there is no speed limits anymore. People are able to control their vehicles and go as fast as they want. And so is that okay? Because they are going to be on the hook if something happens, but is that creating a greater risk to everybody around them? So it's like, you got to look at it. Something that may benefit the individual might not benefit the rest of society. You know what I mean?
But isn't all of society just caring about benefiting themselves
right
over everyone else?
Anyway, so do we need that sort of, now we're getting into political science here. So it's like, should you have the freedom to control every aspect of these different things, or should there be some sort of oversight through the government or other organization to make some of those decisions for
tough.
you?
I don't know. That's really tough.
A lot of this is based on human nature too. Like, are people inherently selfish or selfless? Like, are people going to do what's best for the greater good and everybody else, and not just themselves? Or are people going to ultimately, if you leave it up to them, are they going to choose what's best for them?
It just depends on the person.
It does depend on the person. And would you say the majority of people are selfless, or a majority of people are selfish?
I like to think that the majority of people are selfless, but I don't know.
I think what we've learned from history is quite the opposite. Is if you look at history and you go back 100, 200 years, I mean, just think about life in the 1800s.
Well, yeah, shit was brutal.
It was
like,
and even before that,
go
it was
for yourself.
So, which is why, there was structure put into place eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And, is there too much structure? Is there not enough structure? So it's like, it depends on who you ask. Everybody's going to have a different opinion on it. But I think ideally in my world, it may be better if everybody made those decisions for themselves, because it could force people to learn lessons quicker, and they might be hard lessons, but they're going to learn those lessons quicker, as opposed to decisions being made for them. But at what cost, right? Everything has a cost and an effect. So it's difficult. I mean, that's why it's a philosophical question. It's like it can go different ways depending on who you ask. But Yeah, that's really an interesting one.
Okay, so what if you could program the car to somehow be able to tell avoiding innocent threats?
So like in this case, the child
Sure.
running across the road is technically
Right.
an innocent threat.
Yeah.
But then what if someone's purposely standing in front of the car, getting in your way?
But how does I guess one
And-
day maybe the technology they'd actually be able to tell. But
Well, and
How?
also define innocent versus non-innocent. Like what
well, if you're standing there by mistake, I'd say that's innocent. But if you're there so that the car will then crash into the wall,
so does that person, if you're there on purpose, does that person deserve it?
yeah,
So the car's like, oh, this bitch was here on purpose.
yeah.
Kill him.
But how would the car know?
That
I guess it's just a philosophical.
yeah, that's
question,
the
but
thing is like, how would it ever be able
I
to
think
tell?
it should kill the person that's just standing there on purpose.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're standing in the middle of the road, because it's like there are circumstances where innocent people are in the road for whatever reason, and obviously you don't want to hit that person, so you swerve. But then, the chain reaction of that is,
Yeah.
could be even more devastating. But then there's people who purposely go onto the road. What if somebody's, wants to take their life and they go on the road, and your car, your car's somehow able to perceive that it's an innocent threat, but they're not moving from the road. You know what I mean? So what happens there? I just don't see how it would ever be able. It would have to be able to like read thoughts. Like these vehicles would have to be what the aliens are cruising around in, like able to interact with your thoughts and actually
Yeah.
be able to sense, be conscious
Intention.
in
And
some,
that
some
quickly
way.
too. I mean, I feel like we're very far off from that.
Yeah, so I don't know about that one. As you can probably imagine, my life can get a little hectic sometimes. Got a lot going on between higher love and mile higher. That the last thing I often have times for in the morning is getting something in my stomach, especially something nutritious. Well, luckily Daily Harvest has come through, and they are delivering delicious harvest bowls, soups, flatbread, snacks, and my favorite, smoothies and lattes, which are built on organic fruits and vegetables. Daily Harvest works directly with farmers to source the best ingredients. They freeze them at peak ripeness to lock in flavor and nutrients, which is key, and they never use artificial preservatives or ingredients. With nourishing and easy to prep options, I never have to think twice about what to eat for my next meal, snack, or dessert. Everything stays fresh in my freezer until I'm ready to get it out and enjoy it. Lately, I've been really enjoying Daily Harvest's smoothies in the morning. My personal favorites are the mint and cacao, as well as the black sesame and banana smoothie. Sounds kind of weird. It's absolutely delicious and so nutritious for my body. Daily Harvest is committed to human and planetary health, which means they do their absolute best to ensure transparency and integrity when it comes to their ingredients and the humans who grow them. By supporting farmers who invest in practices that increase biodiversity and improve the health of our soil, and by delivering food in recyclable and compostable packaging where possible, Daily Harvest does the work and I eat and enjoy. It's a win-win. Let Daily Harvest do more for you so you can do less. Go to dailyharvest.com/milehigher to get up to $40 off your first box. That's dailyharvest.com/milehigher for up to $40 off your first box. dailyharvest.com/milehigher.
Okay, so we're going to talk about one of the most famous ethical dilemmas in philosophy. And this was created by the philosopher Philippa Foot in 1967. So basically, there's a runaway trolley racing down a railroad track, flying down, and you are standing a distance away from the tracks next to a lever. Now, someone has tied 5 people to the tracks, and the trolley is headed straight for them. So you could pull the lever and divert the track, saving the 5 people. However, someone has tied 1 person to the other track. So if you pull the lever, saving the 5 people, the trolley will kill the 1 person. So what would you do? Would you pull the lever or just let it be? Now, a few things here before we go.
Okay.
You cannot,
Like there's an obvious answer, right?
you cannot untie any of the people, you cannot kill yourself, and you cannot know the age, health, character of these people, etc. You have to make a decision. So for all you know, it could be 5 kids, 1 person, it could be 1 baby, 5 old people. You don't get to decide that. So what would you do?
I would pull the lever and divert to the 1 person. I think mitigation of loss of life is the best option.
What if these are criminals though?
But we don't know. That's the thing, is you don't know.
Right. So they could be.
But they could be. What if you end up killing a baby and you find out it was a bunch of serial killers laying down on the trolley tracks? Then you look like
messed up on that one.
Then they're like Kendall Ray kills baby, but
but also Kendall Ray didn't
live.
know and was trying to do the right thing. Yeah, I'd say if you have seconds to decide and you don't know any prior information, I'd kill the one person. Affect less lives, less, families would be hurt.
But are you messing
family member?
Are you messing with fate?
Yeah, I think you're messing with fate there. Maybe there's a reason they're on the tracks.
Well, maybe there's a reason that I was there with a fucking lever. So
that's
fair. Fate as well. I don't know. What would you do? You'd kill the five people?
I just walk away and let happen whatever happened.
What?
And just let it roll down the tracks.
So you would not.
So you wouldn't
change it.
You wouldn't. Pull
no, I wouldn't pull it because it's like.
Really?
Why
if
is
you were
that
really in this situation, think about it. That doesn't align with what I know about your character.
Well,
I feel like if you were actually in that moment and you saw those five people and then one person.
But according to this, you don't even know. There's no way to, because if you were there, this would be maybe even a remote situation where you're pulling a lever from a remote location or something. And you're not able, because in this situation, you don't know the age, health, character of the people. If I'm next to the freaking lever and can see everybody, obviously I'm going to be like, who's there? But
you have
assess the
seconds.
situation. I think you probably pull the lever because of 5 lives versus 1. But is that justification to kill one person? Can you equate life that way? Can you be like 5 lives are better than killing 1?
Then you have the whole argument of like we were talking about fate. If you weren't there, the trolley was going to keep going straight and killing those 5 people. So were they supposed to die? Did we change fate? And now that one person who was in theory, quote unquote, not supposed to die if things just progress as they were going to.
What if you killed the future person who was going to go do amazing things? Maybe was going to find the cure for cancer or something, and you ended up taking that person out.
Okay, so adding a layer to this, imagine you are standing on a bridge over the trolley track, and there is only one track this time, but there are still 5 people tied to it. So, of course, the runaway train is going. If it isn't stopped, it's going to kill these people. But you notice there is a very fat man next to you who is so large that he could actually stop the trolley. So if you push him, he will die, but the 5 people will be saved who are tied.
Damn, okay.
Do you push the man to save the 5, or do you do nothing and watch the 5 die?
He's so big he could stop a fucking trolley?
Yep, in this scenario, correct.
Oh, this is hard.
Push him. Can be a martyr, be a hero. Save 5 people.
Yeah, I still would have to go with that.
Okay.
But do you
Saving
get in trouble?
lives.
Are you an accessory to murder at that point? If you push it.
I don't know. That's where that gets complicated.
Okay, so this is the idea of morals and the differences between the two cases is allowing versus doing harm. So you would actively be doing harm by pushing the fat man to his death.
Mm.
In this case, you are using him as a means to an end, saving the 5. But if you do not push the fat man, you would simply be allowing harm. Is this permissible? And you can kind of compare it to this whole idea too. So there are starving children in a country on the other side of the world, and we wouldn't just bomb those children, aka doing harm. But if you sit back and do nothing while they starve to death, which is allowing harm, this is arguably morally permissible. So
yeah,
it's allowing. It's the idea of allowing harm versus actually doing harm.
Right, that makes sense.
I mean, you could apply this situation to a lot of different things in life. Imagine you have a sick animal. Do you have your pet suffer for months and months on months, or do you just put the animal down, put it out of its misery?
Well, that's completely different. You put the animal down.
Animals versus people, I guess. So I guess people look at it differently.
Well, you're putting them down to help them in a way.
Well, wouldn't putting the children down help them too? Not starve to death? Starving to death is a very, very brutal death.
No.
If you knew that they were going to die either way.
They're suffering.
Mm-hmm.
They're suffering. Would you rather sit back and do nothing and have these? Again, you gotta also think of this from a more high, don't be so literal about this. That's the thing about it, is like, literally, obviously you don't want to, nobody wants to come off and be like, I would kill, and make people think that we're like killers or something inside. But it's like looking at it from this perspective of, do you allow humans to suffer, or do you put them out of their, take that away and just end things?
But going back to the fat man, what if you push him and he's not fat enough to actually stop the train? So then they just all die.
No, that's not a thing. In this scenario, he's fat enough. He's stopping the train for sure.
Okay, like 100%?
100%.
Well, then I
stick.
stick with my answer. I'd push the fat man.
So do you intend to do harm or perceive harm? So it's morally looking at it, is one worse than the other? Is it worse to perceive harm or intentionally cause harm, but to save people? And these are moral dilemmas that there are people in this world that face, literally. I mean, if you think about people in the military and situations that they go into where there's, they go on a mission and there's a potential to take out a terrorist subject who's been wanted, he's murdered a ton of people, but in order to do that, you're also going to kill his entire family and children, wife, and they've never done any harm on you or anybody related to you. Is it worth it to kill all of them in order to get the one subject, or do you just not perform the mission at all?
Oh, now this is getting really hard.
Okay, so imagine 2 cases of bombers during a war. In the first case, a military pilot drops a bomb on an enemy weapons factory. This shortens the war and saves hundreds of thousands of lives. Unfortunately, the factory is next to 10,000 innocent civilians who all die in the bombing. That's the first scenario. Now imagine a terrorist bombing, and the terrorist wants to make the enemy surrender, so he detonates a bomb, killing 10,000 innocent civilians. The enemy then surrenders, stopping the war and saving hundreds of thousands of lives. Which one of these, if either are morally permissible?
So obviously, in a perfect world, a utopia that will never exist, none of this happens. But that's not the world we live in. So this is a very legit decision that militaries across the world make all the time. I mean, and what we've seen is it is permissible. In the military's eyes, it makes more sense to, unfortunately, take 10,000 civilians get taken out, but it prevents hundreds of thousands more. I mean, that's how people. I mean, you talk to anybody who's in the military, that's how it's justified. It's like, we had to take out these innocent people in a drone strike, but as a result, we were able to take out ISIS and take out all of these fighters, and therefore lessening the possibility of even more innocent people dying in the future. So it's like, in the military's eyes, that is a permissible thing. So it's like, that's something that's happened since the dawn of man, I would say. Like, this is something that's been a dilemma since cavemen walked the earth. Like,
I think lowering the number of people who die in any situation
in the
pretty
long
much
term
always going to be the right choice in my mind.
So again, with the terrorist, they want to make the enemy surrender, so they detonate a bomb, killing 10,000 innocent civilians. The enemy then surrenders, though, stopping the war and saving hundreds of thousands of lives.
I would still have the same answer. That killing less people is better to me. I don't know. Would you have a different answer? What are your thoughts on all these?
I'm just the reader. Just kidding.
But then here's the thing too. How do you know that hundreds of thousands of lives are going to be saved?
You don't know if it's actually going to work.
Right. Versus, 100% that 10,000 people are dead as a result of this decision.
That is hard.
So,
I don't know. This is why I am not
so
in
then
that
you're
position.
like looking at the possibility of, there's a possibility that more people could be saved, but that may or may not come to fruition. So it's like, do you take that chance, or do you do what is more concrete, and that is, saving the 10,000 people as is, and not doing it? There's so many decisions in life morally that we wrestle with, and ultimately we have to do what, there's no perfect answer. There's no right answer to these questions, because either way, horrible things are happening. But I think you use it comes down to, you go with your gut, and you have to go with what you think is going to be the best situation in the end. And in the end, if there's a possibility of more than 10,000 people living as a result of your decision, even though 10,000 died, I think you have to go with having that unfold and hoping that more people live.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
And that
too.
doesn't always work out though. And that's the thing is you just have to be prepared to deal with what if that doesn't work out. And in fact, it backfires on you and you ended up making the wrong decision. So you have to be ready to own that.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot too, where government fucks up, they do something and then they realize, oh shit, that guy wasn't there. So then we just killed all these civilians. Then what?
I guess it's the same idea with the fat man on the bridge. Is if you push him off and, let's say it doesn't, we don't know for sure that he is going to stop the train. Let's say it doesn't, kills all 6 of them. I guess you don't really know when you make that decision if it's actually going to work or make a difference at all.
It seems
the chance that it could.
Well, and I think that's the thing is like, I would challenge most people out there are going to go with this decision. I think most people out there listening to this are probably agreeing with what we're saying versus, save the fat man and just let the trolley roll.
Damn.
But then again, I think it ultimately comes down to the philosophy that guides you in life, right? Like ultimately it comes down to, do you believe that everything happens for a reason? Do you believe in fate? Do you believe in destiny and all of these things? Do you believe that if that's the way you're supposed to go, then you shouldn't mess with that. You shouldn't try to say, as they say, don't try to cheat death, because if that was already going to happen, then by intervening and changing the outcome, are you messing with someone's destiny? And even though you might save them in the short term, maybe that doesn't help them in the long term. Maybe that creates even more issues because that wasn't what was supposed to happen. So I think it depends. I think it really depends on your philosophical views, which is why these are thought experiments, because it's like it comes down to your individual beliefs. Do you believe in an afterlife? Do you believe in reincarnation? Do you believe in life goes on after this? Or, is there a greater purpose to life? A lot of people believe in God's plan, right? What's God's plan for your life? And so
that maybe these people dying is better for them.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Eternally free or
when
whatever.
Tragic things happen to people, especially people who have religious beliefs, in the moment, it rips you apart. But then in order to heal and move on with your life, oftentimes those people believe that this is a part of God's plan. As crazy and hard that is for people to accept, people believe that. And so that's what you're getting into is like, there's a whole another layer to this when you think about it from that perspective of like, are you intervening with the creator or maker's plan by inserting yourself and making the decisions for whatever is out there?
But if there's really a plan, like I said, you wouldn't be placed there with a lever. Maybe that's all part of the plan and your decision is part of the plan too.
Right. There you go. So that there's another decision.
This is hard. I'm curious, what would you do in some of these situations? Like the trolley one, for example.
I would probably kill the 5 people. I'd probably...
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Why?
Because I don't want to mess with like what is supposed to happen. But then the whole argument of like standing there, this is so hard because I'm put there in theory and I have the lever.
Right.
So then a part of me is like, no, you should use the lever, kill the 1 person, save the 5 people. But then a part of me is like, well, if you really do believe everything happens for a reason, then there was a reason why those 5 people were going to die. So maybe I should just leave it alone. But I'm there for a reason as well.
Right. That's what's so hard.
And you could perceive that you're going to do something that's good. And in fact, it ends up not being a good decision. In the short term it is, but then in the long term it ends up being, say the person that dies and is the one that was supposed to, like I said, cure cancer, but then the people that survived are
serial killers,
or just, they don't do anything. They don't do anything valuable with their life and they're just kind of wasting it. So it's like, then what? You always hear that saying of in the wrong place at the right time or the wrong place at the wrong time.
I don't know. Now I'm just getting confused.
You know what I mean? The wrong place. So like people that, people who
it's wrong place,
just
wrong time.
Like people who are just minding their own business, completely innocent to the situation. Say a drive-by shooting happens, a stray bullet hits them. They would just happen to be in that place at the wrong time. And is that what their plan was for their life? Was that to happen? Or is that just randomness.
Because then I start thinking, this is where and I think a lot of people's selfishness comes into play. What if I was the fat man and someone pushed me? Would I be okay with them sacrificing me in order to save those people?
Oh, that's
Honestly, no. I'd be like, what the fuck?
yeah,
As selfish as it is.
yeah. No,
I don't know if
that's so
I'd
true.
necessarily be like, it's all good.
But it
Because more
depends.
lives will. Yeah,
That depends on your personal beliefs, though.
Of course.
Because, and I'm speaking from my religious background, but one of the things that I was taught growing up is like the great. I think there's a Bible verse on it. Is like the greatest thing that you can do is lay down your life for your brother, or and basically for another person. The greatest deed you can do in your physical life is dying for so that someone else can live, and therefore you'll be rewarded for that. So if you have that belief system, then maybe you'd be like, yeah, push me off. I'm okay with this because I know there's something greater for me after this, and I'm going to be able to save these people.
yeah. I see what you're saying.
So
It would change for me if it was 5 people that I really like knew or cared for, but I don't know.
But isn't that selfish, Janelle?
Yeah, it is.
That you don't care about just random people?
It's
So
also
what
like
about,
survival of the fittest.
would
type
you,
situation.
so if you were the fat man and you had no idea who these people are, and someone was like, yo, is it cool if I push you? Or didn't even ask, just, would you be okay with that, Josh?
Not if I didn't know who they were. Not if
that's kind of what I'm
I
saying.
wasn't able to
Yeah, I have to
have
agree.
have a moment to assess who these people are. If it was completely blind, probably not. I'd probably decline.
Yeah,
because
agree.
there would be a chance that, especially if we're talking about myself, I know that I'm going to go on and do great things in life, but then there's a possibility I could lay my life down for a bunch of shitty people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I definitely would
And
agree with that.
would that be worth it? And obviously factor in family and everything else and what that would do to your loved ones.
Right.
Obviously that creates another situation.
And also, like, us 3, while we may be semi-spiritual, we're not religious in the sense of, like, I'm not sitting over here being like, I know for a fact that if I die, I'm going to meet God tomorrow and it's all going to be good.
Right. Maybe this is it.
Right.
Maybe you lay your life down and
That's it.
that's this. Janelle ceases to exist. There is nothing. And so you just did it for nothing, basically.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it
So I think
without knowing more about these people.
it really, I mean, that's why this is so wild to think about, because everybody's got a different belief system and everybody's got different philosophical ideas. So you really drill down to the core of your beliefs in order to even make your decisions in these circumstances, because ultimately, especially since most of these revolve around death, a lot of it requires you to think about, well, what are your thoughts on the afterlife? Do you believe that there is something after this? And if that's the case, so like I have a fairly strong belief in not even necessarily reincarnation in its traditional sense, but I do believe that life is eternal, and that
I do believe that too.
That whether it's my spirit, my energy, whatever it may be, is eternal to something greater, and a greater life force, a greater energy, a deity, whatever it may be. And I'm a part of that. And so therefore, in essence, life does go on. Does it go on in the same? I've already accepted that I will probably never be Josh, the podcast host, ever again. Mm-hmm. I've accepted that. So knowing that, it's hard to let go of your ego, right? And who you are as a person, your identity. But if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, this is all just a fucking facade. There's nothing truly long lasting about
So then why do you care so much?
Right. Well, that's the thing, is like,
why do you care so much about doing such a good job at your job, or being a good podcaster, or
because life is an experience, and if you don't care about it, then your experience is shitty. So I want a good experience while I'm here. So in order to do that, I'm playing by the rules. But
so is that the ego then? Just talking of, like, at the end of the day, when you go to bed, you want yourself to fill your ego, like, oh, I did my best, because if I'm not.
Well, it not only my ego, but then it fuels my soul, because if I feel that if my ego is happy, then likely my soul is happy as well, if those are connected. So it depends on if you're connected to your spirit and soul, or you're not, or you're just living through your ego, which a lot of people live through ego and they're not connected with their spirit, and therefore it's very obvious who those people are. You can just tell
Yeah.
by the way that they live their life versus those that are connected, because the ego is not in control. The soul is.
Right.
Everybody still has an ego. It's very difficult to just be, completely remove the ego from
I'd say
everything.
it's completely
It's impossible, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on which one you lead with. Do you lead with the ego or do you lead with the soul? And so that's something.
Or are they connected, like you were saying? In order to feed your soul, your ego comes along with it.
Right, but one has to lead the other, so you have to decide which one that is, and you have to get to know. Obviously, the soul's harder to get in touch with versus the ego. The ego's there all day; you can't escape it.
Mm-hmm.
But the soul is much deeper.
You guys are blowing
harder.
my mind right now. I'm like, I don't even know what to say.
Sorry,
I just picture someone in their bedroom stoned out of their mind listening to us.
Yeah, I want to hear people's thoughts on these situations.
All right, so the next thought experiment is Robert Nozick's experience machine. And this kind of ties into like the matrix and simulation theory, which we've talked about. So is happiness or pleasure the only thing that has value to us? Is being happy all that matters? So we're going to be reading an excerpt from Robert's Anarchy, State, and Utopia. It says, what matters other than how people's experiences feel from the inside? Suppose there was an experience machine that would give you any experience that you desired. Super duper neuropsychologists could stimulate your brain so that you would think and feel you were writing a great novel or making a friend or reading an interesting book. All the time you'd be floating in a tank with electrodes attached to your brain. Should you plug into this machine for life, pre-programming your life's experiences? If you're worried about missing out on desirable experiences, we can suppose that business enterprises have researched thoroughly the lives of many others, so you can pick and choose from their large library of such experiences, selecting your life's experiences for, say, the next 2 years. After 2 years have passed, you will have 10 minutes or 10 hours out of the tank to select the experiences of your next 2 years. Of course, while you're in the tank, you won't know that you're in there. You're going to be thinking this is actually happening. Now, others also plug in to have these experiences they want, so there's no need to stay unplugged to serve them. Would you plug in?
This is an interesting one because obviously this reminds me of some movies that are out there, but I can't help but think about Neuralink and some of this technology where we're, connecting technology to our brains and things like that. And I feel that in the future, this is a very real possibility that we could perhaps, I like to kind of think of this one almost as like VR in a way, which obviously this is more real than that, almost like you enter a tank and lucid dream and have these experiences, but then at the end of the day, you're not really having those experiences. You're mentally having them, but physically you're not. So is it worth it to be able to pick and choose from all these different experiences and experience them in this way as opposed to in real life? Because maybe you'll never be able to do this in real life, but in the tank you can.
But are you aware of the fact that this is not actually happening, that it's almost like a dream?
No, not when you're in the tank, you have no idea you're in a tank.
There's no difference from this reality and that reality.
Yeah, the only difference really is that when you're in the tank, you're only experiencing pleasure because you can basically decide what you want. Reminder, after 2 years have passed, you will have 10 minutes out of the tank to select your experiences for the next 2 years.
So when you're out of the tank, you know that it's all not real.
Well, you know that you're able to, out of your catalog of all these wonderful experiences, create your experiences that you want to have for the next 2 years, and then hop back in the tank and it starts going again.
It's almost like the idea of a soul choosing what they experience during their life. You know how many people believe that your soul, before it actually enters a living body, like decides what they want to experience, good or bad, so that they can grow.
But is there growing in this if you're only experiencing pleasurable things?
This is pleasurable experiences. So whether it's like, you want to experience being at the top of Mount Everest or taking a submarine to the bottom of the ocean.
But no one else is actually going to see you experience these things or experience them with you in reality. Maybe in your in the tank they do. But
and that's one of the arguments of like, why not plug in? Well, because a lot of we want to do certain things, not just experience doing them. So,
Yeah.
a lot of times in the case of certain experiences, it is only because first we want to do the actions, that we want the experiences of doing them or thinking that we've done them. You don't want to just have the experience of climbing a 14er or think that you've climbed it. You want to do it. But doing it is essential in order to feel that accomplishment, in this life.
Will the highs run out?
Yeah. Would it even mean
Versus
anything
like,
to you?
I feel that in the human experience, you must have lows with the highs. That
Because what is a high?
if we went through
Yeah.
life and everything was pleasurable and amazing, and our endorphins are peaking all the time, and we're just in this euphoria for our entire lives, as amazing as that sounds, so much of the human experience is also experiencing the other side of that, which is the hard times, because how can you appreciate the high times if you don't have the low times? And that's the dilemma here, is like you're robbing yourself of that. And therefore, do these pleasurable experiences actually end up being pleasurable for you if you don't experience the lows?
Or
Right.
in some way, like actually work to get to that end point. Like if you're plugging into a machine and climbing a 14er, you're not actually doing that.
Yeah, you're not. But if it's simulating it enough for you that it feels just like the real thing, what's the difference? I think the biggest difference for me is that no one else is actually experiencing you do this thing. You're not like having a real interaction. And I think the most important part of life is interaction with other humans, in my opinion, which I guess it could simulate that there's other people.
But is
seeing
that
you,
the
but
same?
it's not the real thing because their soul is not actually.
I just think about coming out of it
Mhm.
and all
no
of a
one
sudden
would know.
returning and being like, oh my God, that was amazing. But also having that feeling of that wasn't real.
Yeah. It's like waking up from a dream.
Right.
I don't think that would be worth it for me because I would just be so upset during that time that I was unplugged.
I think I would do it for a few years. I
Just
think
a
I would
few
do a
years?
few rounds of this for
But
sure.
you say a few rounds, but then when would be like, okay, I've had enough of this eternal life of pleasure. Now I
Like a
want to go back to the
utopia.
real life of experiencing.
I would just
sadness
I
and-
would just do things that I would never do in the real life, and experience it in this way where it wouldn't harm anybody, and then come back.
But then would the rest of your life be depressing because you don't have this euphoric feeling? You aren't
I mean,
getting everything your way.
I like to think that I'd be able to separate it and be like, okay, that was fun and all, but
I think
back
morally
to reality.
for me and with just my internal beliefs, I think that we are here to experience good and bad to shape our soul. And so I wouldn't want to do this because I think then I'm
You're
making
robbing
no
yourself.
progress as a, spiritual being.
So reading more about this here, it says, we want to be a certain way, to be a certain sort of person. Someone floating in a tank is basically just a blob. There is no answer to the question of what a person is like who has been, in this tank for so long. Are they courageous, kind, intelligent, witty, loving? It's not merely that it's difficult to tell. There is just no way to tell. It's impossible that they're any of these things because they're just plugged into a machine. So in a sense, is plugging in to a machine in some ways suicide?
I think you're not actually living the intended life.
I think this would just vary on the person. I think some people would be able to handle going into the machine, coming out of the machine, and being fine living their life and continuing on. Because I do think there are scenarios that this could be a great avenue to experience things that there's no possible way you'll ever experience in your life.
Okay, well, think about it like this. You go into the tank for 5 years and you come out and Holly is 6 years old and you've missed her whole, early part of her life. Would you still want to do it? Or
Well-
just any family member, or like me, you'd miss out on 6 years of marriage with me. Or, while you were in there, your grandparents passed away. Like you're missing out on all of these real life experiences that some of them may be negative, but wouldn't you feel like you missed out if you were just in this basically dream?
Yeah, you would.
Like if you could plug into this thing for like a day and experience something really cool, that I might be interested in. Or
But-
like a week even.
But humans are addicted. We're addicted to drugs. You take a psychedelic and you feel great. A lot of people are like, God, I wish I could feel this all the time. Imagine feeling pure bliss, nothing negative in your life. It's the most incredible feeling. And then you're out and you're like, okay, that was great, but I'm going to go back to my quote unquote shitty life now.
Yeah, I think that'd be impossible to do.
So is it dangerous to even have a taste of it though?
I think so. I wouldn't even want a taste of it.
Interesting.
So let's say, okay, now you can't because you were like, okay, let me get a taste of it. What if you were plugged in, you're in, and you're either in or you're out?
I would not go in.
You don't want to be in eternal bliss though?
No. I want to experience true intended life. I mean, going back to just like my own personal beliefs, I think I'm here living this life for a reason, and my soul is learning and growing during this life experience. So I wouldn't want to mess that up.
Well, I think, I mean, this is where the philosophical question comes in, is like, by doing this, are you messing with your plan or God's plan in essence? Or, are you messing with the grand master design of everything at that point? Are you hacking it in a way? And I mean, this kind of all goes back to like but that's the thing, is like, maybe this is in line with what's really going on. I mean, there is always that possibility that this is a simulation. This world that we perceive as being natural is in fact simulated already. And we're already in this, we've all been led to believe that this is all natural. The cosmos is all natural. But in fact, we're either in some alien's computer or God or whoever it is. This is their they're running an experiment, and we're just a part of this experiment. So again, it comes back to depending on what you believe. If you believe that this is a simulation, then I would say, yeah, why not? Why not plug in? Because there's no difference at the end of the day. It's like both are simulated realities. So,
but if you don't know that information, if you're unaware of whether or not this is a simulation, which we have no idea what the purpose
I wouldn't
of life
take
is.
that chance and just plug myself in. I would stay in the natural world for sure.
Yeah, agreed.
To me, it wouldn't be worth it, because I think it would get old just being in this like a never-ending state of bliss. And
yeah,
I'm curious if you would know that, be conscious in this tank within this simulated experience that you're in, that, oh yeah, forgot my body's just dangling in this tank.
You don't know.
Oh, you don't know. So you wouldn't have any recollection of that.
So I know we talked about how you can't experience, if you're in this, you're only experiencing euphoria, but let's say there's different levels of euphoria. So on the surface, on the bottom, you ate a great piece of chocolate cake. It was delicious, made you happy. Then middle tier is like, oh, you reached 10 million subscribers on YouTube. What an accomplishment. Super great. But on the highest level of euphoria is like having Holly be born again and experiencing what it's like to create the greatest thing that's ever happened to you. So does that change things in the sense of like, yeah, it's all great, but there's different levels of it? Or is there still something to be said about the fact that this isn't real, and are humans eager to be able to experience something that is actually really happening, real experiences, even if it means maybe they're not all great? But it's, yeah, you can experience different levels of happiness in the tank, but at the end of the day, they're not even real.
I mean, I think, again, I just go back to the same thing, that I want to experience my life the way that it's supposed to be, the ups and the downs. Like, for example, my grandmother passed away, and I literally was holding her hand when she passed, and I was 8 weeks postpartum. It was one of the worst times of my life, but I'm glad that I experienced that. Like, I miss her, of course, but what would life be without these downs to teach us about what it's like when the good things happen? How can you even have a gauge of good and bad and positive and negative experiences if you don't experience negative things as well? I think it's dangerous to live in a world where everything is good.
Yeah, let me elaborate on that for a sec. So, is happiness the end all be all? Is happiness really what we're all striving for at the end of the day as human beings? Or is there other things that we strive for as well that are equally valuable to our experience here? I would say in that circumstance, that even though in the moment being with your grandmother when she passed was devastating and sad, that is a valuable moment in memory. I go back to memories too, like happy, like those different levels of happiness. Like, it's not like I remember that piece of chocolate cake I had on my birthday and I like relive that happiness, right? there's only one level of happiness, which would be like my daughter being born, that actually ends up being a core memory for me, as opposed to the other layers of happiness that I could eternally experience in the tank. To me, doesn't equate to the core memories, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah.
I prefer to have the core memories, whether it's because if you look back at your life at the end of the day, those are what you actually care about and remember, and what's most valuable to you as a human being. It's not all the happy times you had throughout your life, all the fun times you had doing psychedelics and eating delicious food. Like, you're not going to be thinking about that. You're going to be thinking about the core memories, good, bad, or indifferent. And those oftentimes revolve around the people that are closest to you and that actually matter to you, and those real human connections that you have. So I would say that is far more valuable than experiencing any level of eternal bliss by just going through no matter how hard they are, how devastating they are. At the end of the day, that's going to be a core memory for you. And oftentimes, sometimes the most negative things that happen in your life turn out to be for the greater good, and turn out to teach you something to where your life gets significantly better because you went through that hard time. So would you want to remove all those hard times?
No. I think your life is almost worthless if you lived it without experiencing anything bad.
And that's kind of what I meant by, like, if you plug in, are you committing suicide in a way?
I think so. Yeah. That's how I would
I would agree with that. I think you're giving up. I mean, in essence, you're giving up being a human being, because you're giving up the human experience, because nobody in this reality lives without the highs, the lows, and the in-betweens. That just doesn't, nobody on this planet lives on a consistent high their entire life. Nobody.
Right.
Because that would mean you live a perfect life, and nobody lives a perfect life.
Because we're not meant to, I believe.
Right. I mean, and then you could roll this into, good and evil and all these other different things. Can one exist without the other? And so, yeah, I think you have to have the mix of the different levels of experiences and emotions. There's a reason why our brains perceive things the way that they do. There's a reason that we have all these senses and emotions and we react to things. It's not, if that weren't the case, then we would be experiencing the world far differently and everything. I just don't think you're sort of cheating yourself out of living a full life if you were to go into this tank and only experience. And I think you would get old.
Absolutely.
Because you're going to, how many happy experiences can you possibly have? Like, until you start,
indefinite.
Right. Until you start, I think in a sense, there's a finite possibility there, because eventually you're going to run out of things to do that are going to provide happiness. And then you're going to start experiencing the same things over and over again.
Yeah.
It might be in slightly different ways. There's obviously infinite possibilities of happy scenarios that can unfold, but eventually they're all going to become so similar to each other after a certain amount of time that it's going to be utterly meaningless to you, because you're going to be like, I already know it's coming. I already know it's coming. I already know it's coming. And the feelings that you're going to feel are going to be the same. It's not like your happiness levels keep going up, and you keep pushing past, breaking through these different barriers.
Yeah, and also, with most good things that happened to you, there were bad things that happened along the way to get to that good thing. So if you can't experience any of those little things, how much does that final good thing happening
Right. The value
mean?
is zero.
Right.
The value ends up being absolutely face value and has no deeper meaning to you. So you're basically giving up the deeper meaning of life by subscribing to the tank.
Agreed. Okay, guys. So we had so many more that we wanted to do, but these obviously take a lot of time, and we think we want to do other episodes like this in the future if you guys are down. So let us know if you would like to see us answer some of these thought experiments in the future, because there's some ones here that I really want to talk about. So let us know in the comments below. We want to know your thoughts on all of these situations as well. What would you do? What do you think? And yeah,
if you have any suggestions for thought experiments or even just philosophical questions or ideas that we could do in a future episode, I'd love to get into sort of the philosophy around religion and God and good and evil. And
that would be good too.
I think all of that's very interesting, and it really it challenges you and your beliefs. And I think that's so important as a human being is not getting stuck in a certain type of way or path, and allowing yourself to be open to other ideas and really challenging yourself on your beliefs, because I think that's how we grow as human beings. And I mean, from my own experience, I was taught one thing my entire life, and then I discovered this whole world of other ideas and stuff. And it's interesting because you start drawing parallels to other belief systems and religions and things like that. And I think what you find is we're all more similar than we even know. And I think that's what's so interesting about these conversations is I think is people who think that they're on opposite sides of the spectrum could potentially start to realize that, oh, we have a lot more in common than we actually think, if we just
true.
actually, if we're open to asking these questions and diving into it, and really allowing yourself to be open to these ideas and challenging each other. So I'm very excited to see where we go in the future with an episode like this, with philosophy and just in general. I love this stuff. So
Yeah, me too.
so
We'll definitely have to do another one of these.
Let us know in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, again, make sure you're following us on Spotify. We really appreciate it. But that is it for us today. We will see you guys next week with another episode. And until then,
Keep on taking your mind a
mile
mile
higher.
higher.